everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for listening. Today, I'll be starting a new series. It's called Prophecy Simplified, where we're just going to go through a few prophecies in Daniel and Revelation, but in a really simple way so that we all can understand and gain knowledge from it. A lot of times, people think that prophecy of especially Revelation is a closed thing and we're not supposed to understand it. But there's a lot of lessons that God has put in each of these prophecies so that we can learn. And it can also help to build our faith as well when we see them fulfilled. So we're going to start at the basics with the symbols that are used in prophecy that can help us to understand what they could mean. Alright? So our first one is the angel. And the angel in prophecy represents a messenger. Alright, so we can look at these different Bible texts. You can pause the video at any time to read each of them. The highlighted ones are the ones that are most explain the symbol. Alright? Okay, so let's move to an example of how angel is used in a prophetic text. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. Okay, so in this text, an angel is used, and the angels are messengers. And these messengers can be people. And the people are spreading this message across the world. I'm not going to go too much into the interpretation of these prophecies now. Later down, we'll be able to go into the interpretations. But I wanted to show you some examples of how they're used in different texts. I hope this example was helpful. Alright, so these are different beasts. These are some of the beasts from Daniel. And they can represent kingdoms or governments. And you can see in Daniel 7 verse 23 where the Bible explains the interpretation of this symbol. I can pause for a bit just so that you can read it, or you can pause the video as well. Okay, our next symbol looks like water or like the sea, right? And waters in prophecy represent a very highly inhabited area or a place with lots of people. And we can see the interpretation as written in Revelation 17 verse 15. I'll pause so that you can read it as well. Alright, let's look at one of the uses of these two symbols. In Daniel 7 verse 3. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So we see that there's some kind of kingdom or power that's arising out of a highly or a very inhabited area. And a lot of the kingdoms in those times that are in prophecy actually came up out of wars where one nation was just taking over another nation, and that area would have already been inhabited. So there was a lot of war that would cause them to take over, and then they would become the dominant power. Alright, this is a woman, and she's clothed in white, and we know that white represents purity in the Bible. And there's some other description. She's wearing a crown with 12 stars. She's standing on the moon. Okay, so this symbol is a woman, and not just any woman. The white represents purity, so she's a pure woman. Alright, and that represents God's true church. And we can look through different Bible texts in the Bible to look at the interpretation of this, the pure woman, as God's true church. Okay, now we look at a happy sunshine, right? This represents the sun. or this picture represents the sun. And the sun in prophecy represents the gospel, can represent Jesus as well. Okay? And we can look through at these different texts to see the interpretation of the sun as being the gospel of Christ. And remember, the highlighted texts are the main texts that you can use when you're doing your personal study. Okay, now we look at the symbol of the eagle, or the eagle's wings. You know that the eagle is a very powerful bird, a bird of prey, very swift animal. Alright, and the eagle represents speed, power, or protection in the Bible. A lot of times God says that He will take you up on eagle's wings and He will protect you from the dangers around, right? And these are some of the Bible texts that represent this analogy of eagle's wings as speed, power, or protection. Okay, and here we have wings. Sometimes instead of saying eagle or eagle's wings, you just have wings. And that also has a similar meaning of speed. And here are some of the Bible texts that prove this point. Okay, let's look at the usage of some of these symbols in prophecy. In Revelation 12, verse 1 and 14, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time, from the face of the serpent. Okay, we see a lot of symbols being used here, but let's use the ones that we were using before. So we have the woman, which is God's church, and the woman is in a lot of danger somehow, so God protects her by giving her eagle's wings, basically protecting her and allowing her to swiftly move from the danger. Alright, there's some other symbols highlighted here that we'll go into later down into the presentation. Okay, here we have another woman, but this woman is a little different from the woman before. As we know, woman in the prophetic terms represents the church. So if the other woman was a pure woman representing God's true church, or the people who are faithful to God, we have this woman, which is also a church, but is a corrupt church. And we can look at these different Bible texts to see the representation in Scripture. And now we have wine, right? Wine is also used in prophecy to represent different things. Wine represents doctrines or teachings. However, some of these doctrines or teachings may not be true doctrines or teachings. They may be false ones. Alright? So it can be used in prophecy to just represent the teachings of a certain group. Okay? And we can look at that in this Bible text. Okay, let's look at how this was used in a prophecy. Revelation 17 verse 1 to 14. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kingdoms of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns, And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornications. That's a very big mouthful there, right? We won't go into the details today, as I said, but we'll just concentrate on how the symbol was used. So we see that the woman is riding on a beast. The church, using the power of some kind of kingdom or authority to carry out whatever it had wanted, right? Or the combination of church and state. And we see that she has caused a lot of nations to take in whatever doctrine that she has been teaching. Whether this doctrine is good or bad, we'll go into it in detail when we reach there. All right, we have the crown, and the crown was mentioned in one of our previous examples. So let's look at what the crown represents. The crown represents victory and kingship, right? And remember in Revelation it says that at the end the victors will get the victor's crown and everything. And we can look at these Bible texts to show how this symbol is used, or the interpretation of it. Okay, here we have a very famous beast that a lot of us may know about. It's the dragon, right? And what does the dragon represent? I guess we all know this one. The dragon represents Satan. Also, previously in one of our examples, we saw the serpent, which also represents Satan. Because we know in the garden, the devil used the animal, the serpent, to carry out his temptations. Let's look at these Bible texts. Remember, the highlighted one is the main one that you can focus on to look at the interpretation of this symbol in the Bible. Okay, here we see a lot of bright twinkly stars. I think it's very pretty. Sometimes in the city lights may block out some of the stars that we see in the sky. But these stars in prophecy represent angels, right? And we can see how this is interpreted in the Bible in these Bible texts. Okay, let's look at an example of how these were used in Revelation 12 verse 3 and 4. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Okay, so here we have the dragon that can represent Satan, and we know that in heaven there was a war when Satan was cast out of heaven, and he took a third part of the stars, which is the third part of the angels in heaven. And when he came, we see the representation of the woman again that he was trying to persecute. He was trying to persecute God's church, but here specified, devouring her child, is Christ. That the dragon, as we know, there was a lot of problems when Jesus was being born, and they were trying to kill the little babies and stuff. So we will look at that later down, more details of this. Okay, these are a lot of little shadows. These are shadows of heads, lots of heads of animals. You see a lion, see a horse, a giraffe. But what do heads mean in prophecy? They represent the rulers, powers, or government. So you remember that the beast is the kingdom. Well, at the head of every kingdom, you have some kind of king or ruler or government, right? So just like the head on the beast controls the body, the head would control the nation. Okay, we can look at the representation in these Bible texts. Okay, look, it's a horn and it has a little face in it. So all of those are horns in the dragon's head. Alright, and they also represent a power rising up in a nation. Because remember, the dragon was also a beast. Alright, and let's look at these different interpretations. You can read the text when you're ready. Okay, let's look at an example in Daniel 7 verse 6 and 7. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Alright, so here we have the 4 heads of the beast, or the 4 powers that would rule the beast. And then we have some other powers arising up. Okay, that's another thing we'll go into later down. Just an example to look at the usage of all of these different and possibly confusing symbols. Okay, we look at the horses, or people riding on horses, and this represents battle. Okay, and we can look at these texts. You know that in the olden days they would ride a lot of horses to go into the battle, especially the governor or the leader of the army. They would go in on horses, right? We can look at these texts to show the representation. Okay, let's look at a usage of these symbols. And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. Okay, so we see the analogy of the battle being carried out. We know that the Christian journey, Christians throughout the ages have gone through a lot of persecution, because whenever the gospel is being spread, the devil is always going to try and work against it. So there's always been a battle between good and evil, the great controversy. And look at the lamb. The lamb is a very easy analogy that you guys possibly all know already, and it's Jesus, or sacrifice that came to die for us and to cleanse us of our sins through his blood, which is one of the greatest gifts we could ever have. Possibly a lot of us didn't ask for it, but it's something that we desperately needed. Okay, and these are some of our texts that represent this, that explain this symbol. Okay, then one of the elders said to me, Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. Then I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. So the lamb is Jesus, and remember, 7 in the Bible is a number of perfection. Okay? And look, we have a little cloud blowing some wind. So this represents the wind, and it represents strife and commotion. We all know the saying, the winds of strife, or a lot of us may know that saying. And it's also used in the Bible in a lot of cases, and we can look at these Bible verses to look at the explanation of the winds representing strife and commotion. Okay, Revelation 7 verse 1. And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. Alright? Okay, here's an interesting one that we met previously, but we didn't get to explain. The clock represents time. Okay? And you remember the other example that said time and times and the dividing of time. Time represents a literal year, and we can look at it in these Bible texts. Okay, another symbol for a year is also a day. Sometimes in prophecy you may see a certain number of days being specified, but it's not literal days, it's actually years. Okay, so a day equals a year, a time equals a year, and these are some of the texts that explain this. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope that you learned a lot from this, and I hope that you'll be able to take these into your own personal Bible study so that it will be way easier for you to be able to go through all the prophecies like a jiffy. And later down we'll be able to go through some of these prophecies together. I hope that you stay tuned and that you learn a lot and that you'll be blessed. Thanks for listening. Bye.